one that comes to mind is the Columbus Day storm. I was a young mother. Brian was still very, very small. He was that small. And we were living out in a housing project. And when that storm was going full bore, I was standing looking out foolishly, looking out the window and watching this giant fir tree inching down the street. And I could see the down telephone wires, just not telephone, I'm sorry, electrical wires, and they were sparking and they were hitting all kinds of things. And when I looked to the left, they had been building more houses down about a block, and they had stacked up plywood. And when the Columbus Day storm hit, that plywood flew like a deck of cards. And that really terrified me. My ex-husband was sitting on the fireplace hearth and did not seem overly concerned, but it sure scared me, and that's that. Well, there are several pieces, but I think the one that did pop up to my mind just now is the environment. I want young people to start believing that we are having a crisis and it's going to be really bad if they don't do something about it. And that means they have to fight for a clean environment. I think my most favorite memories would be I grew up in Madras, Oregon, and I had a horse, and her name was Moonbeam, and she was a Palomino quarter horse mare, and all I was always able to, the minute I got near her, I could talk to her and tell her all of my troubles and all of the good things, and I could kiss her nose. She smelled so good. Anyway, she probably is a favorite memory of mine. She would come when you called her, and that means she could be a long ways away, and you could call her name, and she would just come lickety split. And I could even sleep on her. So that was one memory. Another memory had to do with this little dog that I used to have, that her name was Chloe, and boy did I love her. And one time I let her out. I had two of them, but I let both of them out, and only one of them came back to the door when I called. I had a big fenced-in backyard, but I kept calling for Chloe, and she never came, and that was not like her. And so I went looking for her, and I went around the corner of my storage shed, and I had a mulch box. I'm an organic gardener, and I had a mulch box, and it was 2/3 full, and I had made it out of pallets, and she had climbed the pallets and gotten into and was digging around looking for interesting things to eat, I imagine. And so as I kept calling her, all of a sudden I saw some movement and I turned my head, and his little teeny dog, her head popped up out of the compost with compost all over her face. And it just cracked me up to the point where I couldn't hardly walk over there and pick her up, get her out of there. But she knew she wasn't supposed to be there. And so she tried the rest of the day to make it up to me. When my first grandchild was born, or being born, I was in Salem, and a co-worker was with me, and when we found out that Terry went into labor, she and I got into the car, and I swear it was raining, just really raining and stuff, and I don't know how fast that she drove, but it was very scary. But we made it to Portland, and I made it to the hospital, and my grandson had been born, and I will never forget how happy I was, and that everybody was safe, and they had all their fingers and toes, and I didn't die in a car wreck. And then I had to look at my son, and he was so amazed at his baby being born. And he had so bonded with that baby, I think, before he even got out. But I just will remember the look on his face, and he was feeling, I don't know, he was just absolutely thought the universe popped open. And he was so mesmerized he couldn't even talk about it for a while to tell me how he was feeling. It is Easter. One Easter, we, all of the families, Brian and Terry's family, and me, and Terry's family, we all gathered for Easter dinner at, I can't exactly remember which restaurant it was, but they had this person dressed up like a big giant bunny. And he was just a little guy, and he was walking, not Brian, I mean Jason. And he was just a little guy, and he had started walking not too long before that, but he really wanted to meet that big giant bunny. And she was standing probably about 7 or 8, maybe 9 feet from our table, and he managed to squiggle out of everything, and he went running, literally, for somebody that little. It was amazing. And he hit her, and he knocked that bunny right on its butt. And then he crawled right up her and just put his arms around her and just hugged and hugged. We tried to pry him off, and he had a hold of her fur, the bunny fur. And I know it was a young woman that was inside that bunny outfit, but because she was kind of squealing because she couldn't get up. Anyway, but that was funny. And somewhere in the family hemisphere, we have pictures of that, of him spraddling the Easter Bunny. Probably the one that is most memorable is when I was younger, probably 20, 30 years ago, maybe more. Anyway, my best friend, the people she lived with, inherited a ton of money and bought a brand new Winnebago. And we managed to plan a trip and get the use of the Winnebago. And Pat, my friend, and I, and my very aged 93-year-old aunt. And our destination was Albuquerque. But we had a lot of fun all the way there, and it took us a week, mostly because we stopped and played and looked at the Grand Canyon and went through a pueblo in Colorado. Yeah. And we went to, when we were going through Nevada, we went to a couple of casinos, and then one of our stops involved a place where they had wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mineral springs that we got to sit in for a while. So really, it was an extremely memorable trip, and just all the little, even out of the way places that we stopped, and the big places. And when we were in, I think, we were heading towards Salt Lake City. No. Anyway, we were going through Utah, and there was this house that was completely cut into a huge, huge rock. It was as big as, well, Utah grows them. But anyway, this man had come, and he had, over the years, cut a complete home into this rock. And that was one of the most amazing things I've ever been in. And then I think we saw the world's biggest string of twine, or no, it wasn't rubber bands. It had to be a string of twine. Anyway, it was very big. Not basketball big, but like giant balloon big. Actually, the happiest period is now, and it has been for the last maybe 20 years. I've been retired, and I've had a chance to think a lot, to change a lot, to do a lot of the things that I wasn't able to do. And I think I've grown. and I've matured, and I've settled, and I feel safer than I ever have in my life. And I have for the last all these years. Yes, I have a bunch of them. Um, Probably 50 years ago, I had a cat, and his name was Wilbur. And he was a butler cat. He was black with white and perfectly marked. He was a large cat, and he would, um, when I would crawl into bed, he would come into bed with me and get under the covers, and he would lay on my arm until I went to sleep. And then he would get up and go do whatever it is that cats do at night. But every night he would lay with me until I went to sleep. And I know that because I would kind of wake up sometimes when he was trying to get untangled from my arms and the sheets. But anyway, and then of course I've already told you about Chloe and about Moonbeam. But another of the animals that I could talk about was a beautiful little girl cat whose name was Baby Doll. And she was a baby doll. And she was one of the most gentle, sweet little things I have ever had in an animal. And she was a feral kitten. Wilbur was a feral cat. So anyway, I always had good luck with feral kitties. And last but not least, at least that I'm going to tell you about, is Simon. Simon was a poodle, purebred, beautiful young guy. And he was also a light of my life, and he protected Chloe. He was Chloe's buddy. But Simon used to sit on your lap, and he would lean back against you, and he would tuck his little nose right under your chin. And I swear he would stay that way for as long as you wanted him there. And he was a lover. And he was the smartest dog you would ever know. And I didn't realize, because he was just given to me, and the person who gave him to me says, if you won't take him, give him to somebody else or take him to the pound. Oh my God, I would never have done that. But anyway, he knew so many things and so many tricks that I didn't even know that he had almost his whole life, until he got diabetes and went blind. And then I realized he knew all this stuff. But anyway, he was a wonderful little blind companion also. I've had really good pets. And the two I have right now are way different than their predecessors, but they are unique in their own ways. And especially Mr. Mouth. He's our mischievous one, and he will do all kinds of things to get your attention. And he also will spend all kinds of minutes thinking up ways to get in between me and her when she wants to lay by me. You could just see the wheels turning, and he finally just jumps on her and squiggles down between her and me. He's quite a guy. I don't know whether I remember this or whether it was told to me so many times that I remember now. But when I was about 3 years old, we'll say, we lived on Johnson Creek. And in those days, Johnson Creek was a very nice, shallow stream. And we lived right by the stream, and I used to get away from my parents and get into that stream. And there was a big, nice sandbar right in the middle of it. And I used to take off my clothes and bury them in the sandbar. So when my dad got home at night, my mother would make him go out and wade through to the sandbar and dig up my clothes.